Hi, everyone. Deborah Hamilton. I'm hoping for a great crew to come on. Kaylina, I'm so glad you're here. It's nice to see you again, Dee Dee. Hi, Susan. Great to have you back. It's Deborah Hamilton. You have joined the MAAP community call, which I hope will be well attended since it sort of went viral on Facebook when a breeder went and said she had no care for her pets when she got sick. And she realized that that was a really bad idea. And I said, well, it is. And I didn't really know this breeder. However, a colleague of mine wrote on her Facebook post and highlighted me that you should really speak with Deborah Hamilton. So I'm hoping that some of the people who are on her list will also get here tonight, because tonight we're going to speak about the ask. It is one of the most important things you're going to do when you're making your MAAP plan. So the MAAP plan stands for Make a Plan, Appoint Caregivers, Address the Needs of Your Pet, and Publish. Well, how do you ask for people to care for your pets? And who do you ask? Now, a number of people will say, well, my family will take care of the pet. However, that isn't always the case. And they may say they're going to take care of the pet. And then if you check with a number of shelters in your area, they will let you know that families drop the animals off at the shelter lickety-split because there's no one there to stop them. So tonight we're going to talk about the ask, but before we do, as I always do, I'm going to check in with everyone, see how their MAAP plan is going, see how they're doing, see how their babies are. I know, Dee Dee, you have some neat babies. Tell us a little bit about how everything's going with your MAAP plan.
Well, I missed the last 3 weeks of the meetings. 1 week was just before Christmas. The other week was just before New Year's. And then the next week I had 2 of my dogs trying to die all at the same time.
I'm so sorry. Are they okay?
One is, the other one was 18 years old and it was his time. So sadly, I'm down to just 11 dogs now, and I hardly know what to do with myself.
I know it is crazy when we say things like that, but it is true. It is, you miss one, no other dog fills that spot. So
true. Well, the whole reason why we're doing the MAAP plan is because we do have such responsibilities with these dogs. And if we were to be abducted by aliens tomorrow, what would become of these animals? So that's why we're so busy trying to get this all squared away. I've just added to my own difficulties because now what I'm trying to do is retranscribe everything on Word so that I can have it in document form.
It is really
put it on a thumb drive so I can give all of my appointed caretakers and my veterinarian and my trust attorney a thumb drive instead of a binder to have to worry about.
I think that's brilliant, and I'm going to add that. The only thing I would hasten to remind everyone is that every year you have to give them a new thumb drive or ask them for the thumb drive back, because what you want to do is you always want to check with the needs of your pet and your caregivers whether or not they're able to continue going forward. If everything stays the same, which never happens, I can share that with you. I'd like to say that some of my clients have, gone from year to year to year. Nobody changed a thing. That has not happened. So I just want you to know the thumb drives are great. I love that.
Putting it all on a thumb drive and then having it stored on my computer actually facilitates the ease of updating.
It is really easy to update because you store it on your computer and then you just trade thumb drives. So you buy, 6 thumb drives, 8 thumb drives, and then you say, give me my thumb drive back and here's the new one for 2023.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's it.
Perfect. I'm going to add that to the training that's coming up in February. That's a great idea. See, that's why we're here as a community, because I cannot think of everything. And I take suggestions from my community members as godsend, because we all think of things differently and we all approach things differently. So I think the thumb drive is fabulous because I'm a real paper person. So that makes so much more sense. Thank you, Dee Dee. And I'm glad you're down to 11. Well, that's not so bad. That's not so bad.
It's actually, we really need to get down to way less than that.
I know. We all do. I only have one though, so I'm okay. I was up very high, but now I'm down to one. So I'm so glad you're here. Connie, how are things out in California? Good?
Well, as you know, unfortunately, we have had way too much gun violence in the state over the past 4 or 5 days. So that too is, I mean, look at these poor people in Monterey Park, just going out for a Saturday evening during the Lunar New Year, and they were all seniors, and 11 of them are, about to go 6 feet under, unfortunately, and more are still in the hospital. And then we have the shootings up in Half Moon Bay, which is a lovely, lovely town in Northern California, and then in Oakland too. So it's just way too much. And it just shows if you're in the wrong place at the wrong time, that's another reason for a
something
MAAP
may
plan.
happen. And you know what? There is so many commercials that are out during the holidays with a dog looking out the window. They're relying on you to come home. Don't drive drunk.
Exactly.
Well, now we have to worry about going to a Lunar New Year or going to a supermarket in Buffalo, or there are so many things. So our pets really rely on us. And unfortunately, in this day and age, we really need to think of what would happen to them if we didn't come home short term and long term, because there are the ones that didn't make it. And then there are the ones that were severely injured and are critical and might be in the hospital for a long time. There was someone today who called me and she went to the doctors. She didn't know what was wrong with her. And it turned out she had kidney issues, and they put her in the hospital that day. And she said, it was a discussion. It was a discussion not about animals, believe it or not. It was a discussion about not-for-profit hospitals and how they charge people and things like that. And the theme of the first 5 minutes of this call was this woman went to the hospital. She didn't know she was so dehydrated. She didn't know her kidneys had shut down. They put her in the hospital. And the one thing she worried about was who was going to take care of her cat. We don't know. We don't know if we go to the doctor and they, take our EKG and our heart rates and they send us to the hospital, and you have a pet at home. I know we all want to say, oh, well, I know that I could call Connie, or I know I could call Sally and they'd be there. Listen, it's so much easier if Connie and Sally have that thumb drive or that piece of paper to tell them what to do if something happens to you. And it's also great because if in fact Animal Care and Control has taken the dogs because you've been wheeled out, that person has or can create a document that states, Dee Dee gave me permission to bring the 11 dogs to my house. Here's my piece of paper. Because what happens is you need to be able to show somebody a document that you can take somebody else's dogs. If you have co-ownership papers, great. That'll be helpful, not dispositive. If you have a sheet of paper because you're one of the caregivers, that's so much better. But you're staying safe, and I guess you're not going out of the house, Connie.
Well, I have to, but the terrible thing was the Monterey Park shooter. And of course, Monterey Park is a lovely suburb in the San Gabriel Valley of greater Los Angeles. The shooter came within a few miles of my house. He was cornered by the police SWAT teams and found slumped over of a self-inflicted gunshot wound in the parking lot of one of the big malls in Torrance, which is 15 minutes from me. And all of us are down there all the time. And I went to a meeting of a group that I'm a member of that afternoon at 2:00, and all of us were going, "Oh my God, Del Amo Mall!" That we're always there.
Yeah, it's sort of like going out for the proverbial bottle of milk and being in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Exactly, and all the big department stores are there, and banks, and so on and so forth. And it's at a huge intersection, so highly trafficked intersection. And it was on a Saturday night into a Sunday morning. that,
Yeah.
that
And a
this happened.
holiday,
And a
because
holiday weekend,
it was a
exactly.
huge
So,
holiday weekend for a number
right,
of Asian Americans. And so
exactly.
everybody was out, and the weather, unfortunately, was beautiful.
It was gorgeous. It still is. You can see the sun finally streaming through my window. And we had a 4.2 magnitude earthquake this morning. I did not
Just for
feel
nothing else better to do.
nothing else better to do. I did not feel it at my house. My dogs and I slept through the night. Not a deal. But one of my girlfriends who lives down the hill and is in a 2-story house, I'm in a 1-story. She felt it like crazy, and she is right down the hill from me. Now she has a Cavalier King Charles, and if she had tried to go downstairs when the jolts were happening, she might have gotten thrown downstairs. You never know.
Yes.
So
it's scary.
You just don't.
Yep.
So that
I'm
again,
glad
like I like to kid about, that's one of our 4 seasons here, earthquakes.
Yeah.
So
I know. It's
you never
scary.
know.
That's why I have this every Wednesday night, because I just want people to understand it is such an important thing to plan for, because your pets are relying on you to make sure they stay safe if something happens to you. I know, Sally, you've got a huge plan, and the girls are very safe with you, and the chef. So how is everything? You're waiting for a big storm.
No, we're not waiting. The big storm is here. It's not snow. Unfortunately, it's freezing rain, and it started now. So, I mean, we have like a 1/4 inch of snow, and now the rain started. But on the topic we were talking about a little bit earlier, I take care of my friend Jay's dog, Jill, and Jay's going to have a second knee replacement. And so I saw him driving down the street, and I said, I haven't heard from you. Am I taking care of Jill? He goes, oh, I forgot to tell you. No, I made other plans. This person's going to take care of Jill. This is where Jill would be. And nope, I'm not including you. I said, well, should I be checking your house? You'll be going into rehab after the hospital. It's like, again, get it down in writing or on your thumb drive, because you have to communicate. I mean, I was the person taking care of the dog, and now I'm off the list, which, that's fine. But you have to communicate.
The R word that we use all the time, right?
Yeah.
Redundancy. What happens if something happens to that person who he's dropping Jane off with, or Jill off with? There's no backup. We need an heir and a spare when it comes to taking care of our pets.
Yeah, exactly. And I've been taking care of my friend Hamilton's pets the past week, and you just get it all down in writing. And as Deborah says, it changes. It's a moving target. It's like, this person is perfect this month, and then something comes up in their life, and all of a sudden, no, this is not going to work for the next 3 months. It just communicate and get it in writing. Absolutely. And where are those, vets that you can go to in the middle of the night? Keep updating that, because my friends just went in the middle of the night. There's a sign on the vet store, in emergency, go to this vet. They drove an hour and 15 minutes to the vet. It's closed. Yeah. They go, no, not open. And they go, well, why was it on our vet store? It hadn't been updated. So anyway, that's my 2 cents worth.
It is. You're absolutely right. So it's always so important to make sure that you have at least 3. I'm a big harper of, you have to have 3. And I know a lot of you say, Deborah, I'm having a hard time finding 1. I know Susan has shared that with me over and over again. It's so hard for me to find 1. And I go, I know, but if that 1 slips on the ice outside while they're watching your dog, then they can't take care of your dog. So you need an heir and a spare and a spare. Jan, how is our Tonka boy doing?
Well, things in my life have been personally like some health issues with my parents. And so he's been responding to my stress. That's all I have to say. And I actually had to do something. I mean, I always have the same person watch him. And because I had to fly out literally almost at a moment's notice, and to get where I usually take him takes me 3 hours. And I was like, one way. And I was just like, I can't do that and fly out, because it adds on a day before and a day after. So my friend took him, which worked out really well. So now I have a new caregiver. It was kind of like last minute. I was like, she's like, I'll take him, don't worry. And and I was like,
Well,
okay,
good. Now you have two, so you have an heir and a spare.
an heir and a spare, but life happens, and all of a sudden things, in an instant.
And it's not all about you, right? It's not all about you getting hurt or you getting sick. It's about someone you love getting sick and you needing to be there. For those of you who haven't been here a long time, and the ones who have been, I apologize for repeating myself. My husband broke his shoulder, and I was so glad that I had the MAAP plan, because my friends came and took care of my dogs while I was taking care of my husband at the hospital. And then when he first came home, it was only a short period of time, but the fact that I could kick that in was huge, because I had one less thing to worry about. The dogs were let out, the dogs were fed, they were played with, somebody was talking to them. I had terrible guilt, but it was, if I leave the dogs with Jan or Sally or Connie, I know that they know them, they love them, they know their routine, because they have that piece of paper or thumb drive. Thank you, Dee Dee. I'll be so thrilled to add that to my studying. It just is really, really important to know that there's other people there who are going to help you, and not just if you get sick. And that was the theme in the Facebook. So, Kaylina, how are our puppies? She has 13-week-old beagle puppies. So we love that. They're just the best. So I'll come back to you, Kaylina, when you come back. Susan, how was your vacation, and how did Maggie do at camp, or is she still at camp?
Well, Maggie is home now. As you know, I had a contract with a trainer, and I asked her to make some upgrades. And she said, I need to find another trainer. So at the last minute, I had to find boarding facility for Maggie, which is the first time she was ever boarded. And I took her to a really nice place. It's in a great area. And, it was really hard. I was really worried that they wouldn't be able to keep her, because
How did she do?
She calmed down. I gave her a frosty paws. They brought in some people that knew her from grooming, and it seemed to work out. But honestly, when I picked her up, she was crying and seemed upset. They were sending me photos of her looking happy, but
well, believe it. They cannot torture her to look happy. They can only torture her to look sad. So if they took pictures of her being happy, believe she's happy. And
I'm not
it was
sure.
a great first step.
Yeah, it was a first step, because I did make that connection there. Ivan went ahead and got her microchip, but then I saw that that creates a cancer risk on the paper that was.
Yeah, it is. It's sort of like when you see all of those drugs on the news for diabetes and psoriasis, your nose will fall off, but you won't have psoriasis anywhere else. It's all the lawyers that I want, and I can say this. It's all the lawyers. So yeah, there is a chance for microchips to become inflamed. They can create cancer. However, it is really rare, and the risk reward is so much better. So the reward of being able to have your dog returned is so much greater than the risk that she is going to have a tumor grow where you put the microchip. I mean, I don't know, Connie, you probably do it. Dee Dee, you probably do it. And so I've, knock on wood, I've only had one that turned into what they thought was a tumor, but it just was, and I think the dog was like 11 when it rejected the microchip for whatever reason. And they took it out and they said, well, this isn't cancer. This was the microchip. And, who knows? But in my life, I've only had one in the, maybe 150 that I've inserted. So I would never not send a dog off with a microchip.
Yeah. So she was crying when I picked her up, upset, but then her voice quickly returned, and she's been barking ever since.
Oh, good. It's interesting. So she was crying when you arrived, and probably wasn't crying before you arrived. I mean, Connie, you and I both know that they can put on a dance of the Light Brigade, cry like hysterical when they see you. Yes, drama queens and kings. And really, they were happy as a clam 5 minutes. If you had looked through the glass and they didn't know you were there, they would have been happy as a clam. So great strides forward, though, that she went to a kennel. I'm sorry that probably some of the suggestions that I had made that you asked questions about put the kibosh sorry, on your contract, but I really did think that there was a need for what would she do in an emergency if something happened to her or Maggie? Simple question. What would you do if something happened to Maggie? So I'm sorry, and we'll look for another trainer somewhere else.
Well, yeah, I think she should have been willing to at least discuss it with me instead of, immediately rejecting everything. It was just a suggestion.
Yeah,
And
well,
so it's always a negotiation, right?
well, it is always a negotiation unless, a friend of mine, Marty Greer, said something the other day that I think was so impactful to me. She said, our perceptions are based on the last person we dealt with this problem. So whoever she spoke to last time who wanted to make changes to her contract, it ended up ugly. So she decided, and all of the breeders who've had terrible owners have had this last bias as well. She'll never do that again. If you ask for a change, then you don't trust her and she's not going to deal with you. And that's fine, and that's fine. However, you shouldn't not ask for a change. So Kaylina is back. She was taking a telephone call. How are the kids, Kaylina?
They are good. They are good. They had the rabies shots today.
Oh, we're keeping an eye on them then now for little, rabies lumps on their shoulders.
Yes, that's what I've been keeping out. Everybody got it on the same spot, so easy to keep track. If anybody gets a lump, at least I'll know what it is.
Yeah, so everyone here who isn't a breeder, it is what good breeders do. They make sure they know where these vaccinations go so that if a little lump comes up, and that's every time you get your dog vaccinated, not just when it's with the breeder, but every time you get your dog vaccinated, make sure you make a note in your phone, you make a note in a book, you make a note in your brain, which is sort of like Civ for me. So I would never suggest that in a world, or else always do it on the non-show side. In fact, Junie just got shots the last time we were there early January, and he was going to give him shots on his show side, which only the dog show people will understand. And he's not showing. So it made no difference really. But I'm so used to telling them not to give him shots on his show side in case he gets a lump that I always know where the shots are. The shots are always on the non-show side, either in their shoulder or in their thigh. So just make sure you always are aware. Yes, Connie.
Also, please be aware if you have a purebred dog, if your dog is vaccine sensitive. I have a vaccine sensitive breed. And so what we have a tendency to do, of course, just about every state in the union, certainly the golden state of California, requires a rabies vaccination for obvious reasons. And I'm glad for that. However, if your dog is a senior and immunocompromised, the state will accept a veterinary waiver as long as your vet writes a letter to your licensing authority and it's on file. That's great.
And take it with you.
But other vaccines are optional. And so what I do with my dogs, because this is a vaccination sensitive breed, is after the age of 2 to titer. Mm-hmm. And as long as the titer levels are, such that their immune systems are protected, then that's fine. And I do that for DHPP and, a lot of the other, really awful diseases that are out there. Now, I have vaccinated for canine flu because it is rampant in Southern California, including
get it here in North Carolina. 2 of my vets.
Right. And especially if you were showing or trialing your dogs, like I do both, or even just taking your dogs regularly to an obedience class where they're around other dogs and in public spaces, they can pick it up from the grass where an infected dog has been. So my vets absolutely insist on it. And so I keep the canine flu vaccines up to date on mine, but I'm very sparing on a lot of the others.
The titers are always, and again, this is a conversation to have with your vet and to go along with what Susan said about asking questions and then having the person tell you to go away. Veterinarians tend to do that too. And I love and respect most vets. And if they aren't really willing and able to talk to you about titers, just be persistent, be very respectful, but be persistent and say, listen, I just really want to know about titers because it's important to me. My 10-year-old dog may not necessarily need a vaccination. They may be carrying a titer. My 5-year-old dog may not need a vaccination. I don't want to save money because if you titer, it costs money. So it's not like you're saving money. You're robbing Peter to pay Paul. However, the dog's system is not intruded upon by a vaccination they don't need. So just have that conversation with your vet. Martha, I'm so glad to see you. I'd love you to introduce yourself and tell us what your pets are. And if you want, you don't have to, but you're more than welcome.
Hi, Deborah. I was here 2 or 3 weeks ago, and excuse me, I'm the attorney in New Mexico, and I apologize.
I remember. Thank you. I apologize for my brain cells.
Well, and we were going to get together, but then you were busy, and I was sick that week. And then, truth be told, because it's 2 hours earlier here, this is the time of day that both I get a lot of clients who need to meet after work, and also. So I will share now that I know a little bit more about your group and what you do. So Brio, my giant schnauzer, and my heart, when he and I moved back from California almost a year ago now to New Mexico, I was horrified that he wound up in the vet's clinic for almost a week. With some horrible stomach infection. He'd never been sick a day in his life, and he was diagnosed with diabetes. And so I've been dealing with the diabetes mellitus. Now I'm very, very happy that we've made it this far. I had zero experience with diabetic animals. There's no diabetes in his bloodline on either side. My breeder has been I'm guessing must be going on 20 years of breeding first standard poodles and then giant schnauzers, has never had, but as the vet said, it doesn't matter. I won the lottery. And
it's an equal opportunity shit show.
Right. And, and this has been very, very hard on me because I had just lost my almost 14-year-old giant schnauzer. And the other thing that I did not know about in time to anticipate this. And I basically am in a situation that is so undesirable of having come back to New Mexico. It is a very, very rural area. So it's very interesting to me because some of the things that are talked about are like, are more symptomatic, if you will, or more common of a more affluent area with, greater population. We have a very, very sparse population and, huge poverty here, which changes things like, my veterinarians will not talk to me about titers. I mean, I've tried that for years and years. They don't. So what I started to say was I actually, and I have 5 horses. My ex-husband lost our home and horse property in 2018. I came back here basically to interview for a job, was sleeping on his couch with Brio, and the shit hit the fan. Brio got sick. The landlord said that he and the horses had to move. So Brio and I are actually now sharing a house with my ex-husband, his 2 dogs, a cat that was my cat. And what happened the weekend that we moved is Brio lost his eyesight. And I'd never had that experience where one day I'm riding my horse with my dog and he's just flying over things. And the next day in exactly the same place, he's, running into the dirt head first. And because we were moving that weekend, I hadn't really, it took me a minute to figure out what was going on because of course they lose their depth perception first. The first thing I noticed was that he was reluctant to get out of the car and he wants to go everywhere with me. So, knock on wood, I mean, he's doing well. It took me a few months, but eventually I figured out a way to still be able to take him with the horses. That's what he and I love to do most. And I've trained my horse to step over and let him pass to the right. And because he always wants to be in front, my vet says, he asked me recently, he said, isn't he blind? And I said, yes, he's almost completely blind. And Dr. Wilmoth said, and he comes back to you? And it was like, you're kidding, right? I mean, Brio's 7, we've been doing this since he was a puppy. Of course he comes back to me. Why would he not come back to me? So, he continues to have a very good life but I continue to worry. Every week or every 2 weeks when I take him in to have the glucose tested, I hold my breath.
We are all, I can see the faces on the screen for the Zoom. We are all sending you our love and our prayers because we've all been through a sick dog. Everyone who's been a member of the MAAP community has been through a sick dog. So we're sending what I always call my GAVAs, the guardian angel virtual assistants, to you to give you the strength. And of course, give Rio the strength to continue. It's amazing how dogs adjust who are blind. My girlfriend, Carolyn McAteer, has a dog that went blind. He's 3 generations PRA clear. He has PRA. Doctors don't know how that happened. So I know the heartache and pain of having a dog lose their eyesight quickly. And you're like, what's going on? So
I was very surprised.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And it's overnight. It's like, oh my God. And diabetes
it's very,
is a
very different.
serious illness. So you have to really keep track of that.
No, very, very, very much so. And I had for years, I had sworn by, my very special raw feeding, cooked food, everything. And I've had to let it go because 40 years of veterinary science. And, it's like, okay, if I have to feed him Hill Science Diet WD. And at first I was like, oh, I can't possibly feed that. I do not, but now it's like, this is keeping my dog alive. What wouldn't I do to keep my dog alive?
My dog alive. That's the mantra of all of us here. So what wouldn't I do to keep my dog alive? And my dog will let me know when he doesn't want to be here anymore. And clearly, if he's running in front of the horse, he's not having an issue right now that he's aware of. That he's aware of, right?
Well, and I won't belabor this, but he was given to me by my breeder when I lost the first dog that I bought from her to a terrible brain cancer at 7, and she had developed idiopathic epilepsy at age 6 months, so we had 7 years of a dog with very, very serious idiopathic epilepsy that had changed how I live with dogs forever, because I lived an hour from town, and there's no way that you leave your dog home, and drive an hour into town where you're going to be buying groceries and horse brain and whatnot all day. But I learned more about epilepsy than I ever wanted to know. Now I'm learning more about dog diabetes than I ever wanted to know. But eventually I try and use what I learned to help other people.
And that's very important. And I know that in Irish setters, we do have epilepsy. And I had an epileptic dog that I rescued from the North Shore Animal League, an Irish setter. So that is the most heartbreaking thing to have to navigate, because it just really debilitates them. Diabetes does as well, but not in such an angry way as epilepsy. It doesn't come in waves and is so angry. So we're here for you. Please don't hesitate to come back. I'm so glad you shared the story with us, because now you have at least 9 more people praying for you and for your wonderful Brio. And so tonight given this discussion, so it's so important. I hope your ex-husband knows how to take care of Brio. God forbid you fall off the horse, God forbid, or something occurs, because it is really important to have people who know about his diabetes, know about how to care for him, and asking people who would be comfortable doing it. So I might be able to come and feed your dog and let your dog out, but if I have to give your dog a vaccination or a pill or something like that, I'll never forget when a colleague of mine who had pointers wasn't really good at grinding nails. And if you know pointers, their nails are ground all the way to their elbows. And he would bring the dog over for me to do it, and we'd be done in about 2.5 minutes. And he goes, she fights me all the time. I said, well, she and I both know that there is no fight that she's going to win. So she gives up really quickly, and we're able to do the nails, really short, because that's pointers. It's the same thing. You have to find someone who feels really comfortable caring for your pets in the way that, I hesitate to say in the way you do, because there's no one who's going to take care of it.
No, it's just like children. But, one of the biggest ahas for me, I actually had my son-in-law and my daughter, who then owned horse property, had moved me back onto their horse property with Brio a year ago. And to my horror, the very first night I was there, my daughter's puppy, and I'm sorry, this is on my daughter, who I had rescued from the shelter when she moved home in a divorce, and who Brio had raised, he turned on Brio and drew blood.
Yeah.
So it was like, I cannot stay there. I could not stay there. And thus, you know, I've had to move in with my ex-husband. He does an okay job, but
Yeah, it really is
but
hard to do this.
It's not what I need. No.
That's why I said tonight I went to the AKC Legislative Liaison Conference, and there was a lovely woman there, Carla Bass, who has a great book out on writing clearly. I'm going to pull it up on my phone because it was just one of the better things that they have done. It was really, really very good. And so you really want to make sure that when you're writing down what it is that you are doing for your pets, I can't find it. Rose will put the name of the book in the
I saw it in your announcement, but I didn't know.
Good, perfect. So the announcement's there. I can't find it on my phone. I am so challenged. It's ridiculous. But if you Amazon Carla Bass, easy name, you'll find out the name of her book that talks about how to write to influence. And so when you're asking people, you could write it down. You know, how are you going to influence Dee Dee to take over the care of your dog? She lives down the street. Your dog, you know, has epilepsy or has diabetes. She's never done it before. Well, you have to sort of ask her if she's willing to learn. And if she says yes, then you bring her over and give her the, you know, ideas. I remember when my friend Susie Sullivan came and was taking care of my dogs, and she did things beautifully, just so slowly. And that's the other piece.
Hard. That's very hard.
That's the other piece that we all have to understand, is that if the dogs are going to be beautifully cared for, but it'll take a half hour instead of maybe 10 minutes, that's okay. The dogs will live. They will absolutely live. Oh, there it is. Great. Write with Influence. It was a great book. But I really, what I'd like everybody to know is that no one's you. And if you're asking people, don't only ask people like you, ask people who may bring something else to the table. You know, people who are nurses, people who are, you know, vet techs. Now, they're going to absolutely do things maybe a little more quickly than, say, Susan is, because Susan is very gentle with Maggie. But a vet tech who's already handled the dog that might bite them a million times, right, might be able to do something, and Susan would be there in awe going, holy crap, I could never do that with Maggie. So always remember that to ask is done in a way that enlists. I spoke at a over 50s, it was a big apartment building in La Jolla, California, Connie. Beautiful, right on the cliff. They overlook the ocean. It was beautiful.
Very beautiful there.
And it's assisted living, so it's beautiful. But I take that back. It's independent living, but it has step down as well. So they have all their meals planned for them. They all have independent living. My friend lives in one of the apartments. It's just lovely. She looks at the ocean. And I went to speak to all of her colleagues, and one of the guys who was there, who was probably 90, he said, listen, I want somebody to take care of my dog, but I don't want to have to take care of their dog if something happens to them, which, of course, if you're 90, that makes sense to me. I don't really want to take Connie's dog if I'm older than Connie and, you know, just because. And I said, well, where do you know someone who knows your dogs? And he goes, well, at the dog park, we have 3 or 4 friends who know my dog. And I said, are they younger than you? And he goes, yeah, they're younger than I am. I said, well, why don't you say to them, listen, you know, Fluffy and Chocolate Chip get along really, really well. And, you know, I'm no spring chicken. Would it be possible if I had an emergency, if I put your name down? Because, you know, we already know that Fluffy and Chocolate Chip get along. And I'll have a long-term caregiver for, you know, Chocolate Chip or Fluffy, whichever one is the dog I have. But for an emergency, you know, we always have that nosy neighbor thing. Would you be able to take the dog for a short period of time? If you don't ask, you don't know. And if you ask and they say no, thank them very much, because it is a big responsibility to take somebody else's dog and take care of it. And remember, if you ask somebody to take your dog and take care of it, be very slow and steady about training them, so to speak, on how to care for your dog. because they may not pick it up at first. They may need a time or two to take care of your dog in the way that you would like them to take care of it. But most people have really good hearts and are really trainable. I know Connie's caregivers are usually other Wheaton people. So Patsy and Casey would go to them. But I'm sure, Connie, if you were to think about it, they're not going to do it exactly like you.
No, they're not, but they are all knowledgeable. For instance, two of my four caregivers, well, all of my caregivers are dog people. And two of my four are breeder owner handlers like I am. And the other two are in different breeds. One is in Welsh Springers and the other is in Cockers, but they're dog people. And, they know what it's about.
And they're close by. So
they're close by.
For Dee Dee and for Jan and for Sally and for Susan and for Martha and Kaylina, knowing somebody's close by that can step in your shoes right away and having them have permission so that if anybody questions, well, we're going to take these dogs. No, wait. I have this piece of paper or this thumb drive that says, and you should really print out the thumb drive because they're never going to believe the thumb drive, but have a piece of paper as well, that I can take care of the dogs, leave them put. And Martha, especially for you with a dog with diabetes, definitely need an air and a spare for the care of him, because it is something that is life or death for him. So definitely making a plan for his care, short term, is key. I wanted to remind everyone, if you look at your chat, that Jan is having her Reiki workshop February 12th. I want everyone, if they can go, because listen, all of us will do so much better, especially if we're stressed. And please raise your hand if you have no stress in your life right now. Please raise your hand. I want you to raise your hand. Anybody? Oh, Susan's raising her hand because there's no picture, and so is Kaylina. And definitely Martha's raising her hand because she has no picture either. I can share with everyone who is on the telephone that the people with pictures are not raising their hands, because given this, Sally's not raising her hand either. She turned off her picture, but we're not raising our hands. We really
I am not raising my hand, Deborah and friends.
We're not raising our
Starting
hands.
my own law firm, living with my ex-husband, dog with diabetes. That's just the beginning.
So my workshop is not on the 12th. It's Jan. Jan, tell us a little bit about it before I go into my own shameless plug.
Okay. Well, before we get to that, one thing I learned with this whole emergency kind of caregiver situation is that, first of all, I asked my friend, I said, Tonka takes one med and then 4 supplements, and said to her, the meds and powder, but the supplement, I said to her, well, could you just pill them? And she said, what's that? And I said, okay. So what I've done, and I actually have extras now available, is I actually have put in little baggies, everything together. So all the person who cares for him needs to do is dump the whole baggie in his food and mix it in. And I figured I'm just going to keep that I'll refresh it every now and then, but I'm just going to keep it like
an emergency baggie, right? Exactly.
Or a few, just because, I never knew, just in case.
If you've got to drop everything and run, you're not making baggies of supplements. And quite frankly, it's much better to keep them on the supplements they're on. But unless they're diabetic supplements or kidney supplements or something, they probably will be okay a day or two without them. You'd rather they didn't if you had to drop everything and run. If you don't make the little baggies that Jan's going to make sure. So tell us a little bit about the Reiki, and I'll then tell everybody about the workshop.
So it's a combination of Reiki, yoga, and meditation. It's a 2-hour workshop that's happening on February 12th. Super excited. It's all on Zoom. I'm partnering with my friend Solara from Atlanta, and we're going to do this together. So I think, Deborah, if you want to register, we'd love to have you. If you have any questions, you can feel free to reach out to me. You don't need any yoga experience at all. So if you've never done yoga, don't worry. So
yeah. That's where I'm coming from. No yoga. Well, I did a little yoga, but my wrists don't work. So, and then my workshop will be the 18th and 19th from 12 to like 2:30. That's to accommodate my colleagues and friends who want to sign up in California, because I know they don't want to be there at dark 30. So we're doing it from noon to 2. And would love to be able to have any of you who have already purchased the MAAP plan to come. There's a huge discount in coming. If you have already purchased the MAAP plan, I'm just looking for the opportunity to help everybody, put a pin in it, sit down, work with everyone together, and be able to make this plan and have it done for 2023. I know that a friend of mine used to say, you should make it MAPs. And I said, why am I going to make it MAPs? She goes, because at the end you have to say schedule a review every year. And so I just keep this discussion going so that I remind you at the turn of every year that you really do have to check in with everyone, flip out their thumb drives if you're as smart as Dee Dee and you gave them one, and make sure they all know what's going on, and make sure they know how to use a thumb drive, because there are people out there who look at a thumb drive as if it's, what the heck is this? So make sure not only do they know how to pill your dog, but they know how to pull the shit up off the, excuse my expression, off the thumb drive, because if they don't, then holy Toledo. And I can tell you that that sometimes happens to me. I'm going to go around and ask everyone to give one idea, one thought about what you did to ask people to care for your pets that you thought worked really well. I'm going to start with you, Dee Dee.
It was relatively easy for me, simply because I've been a volunteer for one of the local rescues here in town. And so the rescue operator is my first choice as a pet caregiver. Her daughter-in-law is my second choice, and she's also a dog person who has a fabulously large property that at one time was a dog kennel. So she's actually got facilities for caring for a large number of dogs, but she's not operating a dog breeding facility of any sort there.
Right. Right.
Then my third caretaker is a woman who I met through my veterinarian, and I've been day caring and vacation caring for her little bitty Pomeranian ever since. And that's been almost a year now. So I just had easy choices to make.
Thank God.
Outside of that, I don't know who I would go to next, but I'd find somebody, I'm sure.
It's only in the throes of desperation we find anyone. I'm going to go to Sally after Dee Dee, because she has had the throes of desperation and found people.
I was going to say, I found it very difficult. And it's all communication and calling right before, you're leaving, and going over all the specs of what you need for the dogs. I have older dogs, the emergency clinics, their food. I'm like Jen, I prepare everything in advance. It's frozen, ready to go for them. But just keep asking people, as Deborah says, when you're out walking or you meet a dog that they get along with and the owner is pleasant, ask them. And in my case, two of the people that I would have come take care of the dogs do not have dogs. So it's different for everybody. So just
don't stick with just the people who have dogs. There are people who like to have dogs that come to visit but don't stay.
They would love to have dogs. And it's when I lived in Seoul, Korea, and I'd walk my Irish setters. I'd walk by the military base. People would come up to me, like, please, if you travel, if you leave Korea, please, could your dogs come and stay with us at our house? So just, communicate, talk to people.
Ask the question. How about you, Connie?
Well, it was relatively easy for me. My BFF, of course, is also a Wheaton breeder owner exhibitor, and she's an AKC breeder of merit for over 30 years. And she is the owner of Casey's dad and co-owner of him. So that was definitely an easy one. And one of my other Peeps is also a Wheaton breeder owner exhibitor, and we're dog show friends. And then my two other caregivers are in my obedience club, and we all hang out together. In fact, I'll see them tonight when Casey and I go to obedience class. So at any rate, that was very easy for me. But for people who are not heavily connected in dog networks, it would be harder.
It's really hard. And it's interesting. You mentioned co-ownership. So when you do the ask, remember, you have to start the ask. If you co-own a dog, you need to start the ask with your co-owner, even though you might feel that that's the last place on earth you want to leave your dog. I get it. However, if you've signed a contract and that contract says the dog has to go back to your co-owner, if you set up this wonderful MAAP plan without speaking to your co-owner, 9 times out of 10, they will get their nose out of joint and tell you, who the heck do you think you are? And we're not doing anything with Sally or Connie or Dee Dee because you didn't, I get the dog back. So I always say it is so important to start with the co-owner and then say, you live in Connecticut, you live in California, I live in North Carolina. I have someone who's here in North Carolina who walks Junie when I'm not home and who does this or does that. So I'd like to, give it to them. And if you want to have a contract with them so that if they can't care for Junie, they give it back to you. They are fully aware of my commitment to you and your commitment to Junie. And so they don't want to violate that. That's how you get around necessarily having to give it back to the breeder, because the breeder will take their dogs back. They always do. And some are more strongly connected than others. However, if you have someone who knows the dog likes, is relatively normal, will talk to the breeder and be normal, and will enter into a contract where they'll return the dog if something happens to them, then there really is no reason why you can't work it out. But it's the circuit you take. If you take the one trying to bypass the co-owner, believe me, it will never work. If you take the one that includes the co-owner, it absolutely will work, because they want the dog to stay in a situation where it feels comfortable as well. I mean, that makes just so much sense. Jan, anything to add, especially now that you had to find somebody new in like 25 seconds?
Well, I found somebody new, but it was somebody I've known my whole life. So she had never pet sat for me. So, but I have taken care of her dogs multiple times. So that wasn't, and the other person that watches him, I got originally from doggy daycare. That's how she watched him for many, many years. So I would say, look everywhere you can think of, because you never know. And worst thing that can happen is somebody says no.
And you know what? It's the last place that you think to look is where you're going to find the person who's going to commit themselves and care for your dog the most. I'm telling you, it is always that way. I mean, it's just always been that way. When we're at a workshop, somebody will say, I asked the lady at the grocery checkout because I had my pin on, and they said, what's that? No, this is my Irish. Oh, I love Irish setters. Well, you should come over and meet them. And when they come over and meet, you say, listen, if I go on vacation or if I go on a trip, or they'll volunteer to say, oh, I'd love to come and take care of it when you go on vacation, and just have them over before. Maybe they're crazy like me, but maybe they aren't crazy. And that would be a really great way to have the dog meet the person and you meet the person and see if it would work out. Susan, I know you just came back from a trip and you had a horrific last 5 minutes before you left, knowing you couldn't give it to the trainer and then had to find a daycare. Anything to add? I know it's been hard for you to find a caregiver for Maggie.
Well, just listening to everybody, it just gave me some thoughts about, developing the networks. It's been hard because I've felt kind of isolated, and with COVID and, dealing with my personal situation. Right.
And that your breeder got out of it. So you can't even give Maggie back to the breeder if God forbid something happens.
I cannot, but she said she would help me if it came to that. But right now
I have to help you now, because when it came to it, if you had a situation like Jan had, that wouldn't be easy to navigate. So you really do need to call her and say, it came to it. We need to, because you did have a situation, you were leaving and you didn't have anybody to give her to. So you need to make that call now, because you have a perfect scenario to have your breeder set up how she would help you.
Yeah, I would need more specifics.
Yep. You would need more specifics, then I'll help you when you need me. not really good, especially if you can't talk when you need help, or if you're admitted to the hospital and you know, like the woman who was on the podcast that had kidney disease or a kidney shutdown. They weren't giving her a lot of opportunity to look for a caregiver for her cat. So it really is really important. Kaylina, anything to add, honey?
Just make sure you have a backup for your backup, because sometimes things happen. One of the first person on my plan right now is undergoing construction on the house. So if I had an emergency, they have no place to take my dogs with their dogs and all of their stuff during the construction. So what would happen? So just make sure you have a backup for your backup.
Yeah, Kaylina, an air and a spare. That's my big thing. An air and a spare and a spare. I had 3 people lined up to take care of my dogs when I broke my ankle. One of them selfishly broke her wrist the week before I broke my ankle. I don't know what she was thinking. So she couldn't take my dogs. And the other one, because, you know, I had 2, that was more than enough, right? The other one was renovating her kennel like your caregiver. And there was nowhere for my dogs to go. There was no room at the inn. How would that happen? How would you have this shit hit the fan all at once? It just does. I'm telling you, it does. And that's why we need air and a spare and a spare. You know, 1 spare is good, 2 spare better. I always think that, you know, it just is really important. Martha, anything to add? We are sending our love to you and to our wonderful boy who's suffering with diabetes.
Thank you. I don't, because I haven't gone through this, but this has been really helpful because, you know, my brain is turning, my wheels are turning. It's a difficult situation here. Most people are a good bit older than I am. The other thing is that, you know, unlike everyone on this call, an overwhelming number of people who live in this part of the world do not take the kind of care of their dogs. They don't view them in the same way.
They're more agricultural than
they're much more agricultural. So many people, you know, if their dog had a diagnosis like this, they just let them go. And
so I'd be befriending all of the vet techs at various hospitals. So when I moved to North Carolina, Martha, I've gone to 4 different vet hospitals. I kid you not. And I'm sure all of the vet techs, because if push comes to shove, I'm going to need to be able to reach out to someone to care for the dogs. I have a lot of older neighbors who all stop me on the road and want to walk Junie. If I don't like somebody, I will let them walk Junie, because he will rip their arm off if he's suspected, knock them down, break their hip. It'll be a shit show. So no, nobody's ever going to be able to take care of the terrible boy who's climbing up on my lap now. There he is. He is naughty. No, I don't want kisses. But you really do need to befriend, especially since he needs such special care, people who in the know. Right. So if you're in New Mexico, there are people who I know. And so if you shoot me an email, I'll try to connect you with some of the people that I know in New Mexico. Kayleen, you have your hand up.
Yes, I just realize it after the fact. If you have a good relationship with your vet's office, sometimes that might be the resource you need to go to in an emergency for somebody to watch your pets.
Absolutely.
Or they might have somebody that they could recommend to you that they would trust. And if you trust your vet, then you can trust that person. So
absolutely. Because, you know, there's that know, like, and trust. And so if you know your vet, so I know Connie, and if she recommended somebody to me, I would be more likely to take that person to care for Junie than, you know, a stranger. So you're right. You need to befriend is he bad or what? He is like,
he's really cute.
No, Deborah, he's Irish.
He's like, enough of this. You need to get some lipstick on. So he's licking the lipstick off. It's not that he licks me a lot. He's licking the lipstick off. So I'm so glad all of you are here. Good, Dee Dee. So we're going to have a picture of another baby. Look at that baby. Oh, look at that face. Look, Junie, there's a dog in there. Look at the baby. Your baby's looking like, what are you doing? I love it.
This is Annabella. She's actually my youngest. She'll be turning 9 in March.
You have 11 dogs and she's the youngest?
Yes.
Holy Toledo. And there's Tonka. Such a good boy. I'm so glad. I know that Casey and Patsy are down
They're
below.
passed out.
They're passed out,
Patsy is on my foot in the
Yep.
knee hole of the desk, and Casey is behind the chair behind me, both.
And I know
down for
that
the count.
the princesses are in the other building under beautiful, I kid you not, dryer heated. Martha, you need to move near Sally and Gordon. Dryer heated blanket.
Where do they live?
They live in Connecticut. And,
Oh.
and Sally heats the blankets before she puts them on them. I want to go live with Sally and Gordon because I would be
Yes.
well cared for.
I think I do too.
So until next week, everyone, we're sending all sorts of love and strength to you, Martha,
Thank
to
you.
navigate this. We're so glad you're here. Remember, tonight's talk was about how to ask, really good pointers. And until next time, this is Deborah Hamilton. This is the MAAP Community Call, and I'm so glad you're here. Kiss your babies for me. Bye now.